What started as a custody battle turned into one of the most disturbing child murder cases I've ever read about. And the worst part, people warned something bad could happen more than once, and somehow nobody stopped it. This is the story of Eli Hart. So I was reading about this case recently, and the first thing that you learn about Eli is that he was just a normal kid. He was 6 years old, super social, the kind of kid who would walk into a playground and make friends with anyone. He loved being outside. He loved exploring, just doing normal 6-year-old things. His father, Tori, described him as curious and always asking questions. So, according to everyone, Eli was just a happy kid, which makes what happens next so much harder to hear. Because this isn't a random tragedy. There were warning signs, a lot of them. And those warning signs mostly centered around Eli's mother, Halisa Thaler. Now, over time, people close to the situation started getting worried, very worried. There were concerns about drug use and concerns about her behavior and whether Eli was actually safe in her care. Eventually, things got serious enough that Child Protection Services stepped in. This happened around January 2021. Now, Eli was removed from Halisa Thaler's custody, which honestly at this time was probably the best decision for him. Because if authorities stepped in, that usually means something serious is happening, right? So right after that, Eli was placed in foster care. But here's where the story takes an interesting turn. Because Eli didn't go with strangers. He was placed with Nikita and Stephen Kronberg. And Stephen actually was related to Halisa Thaler. So technically, Eli wasn't with strangers. He was still with family. And during that time, things actually seemed to go really, really well. Nikita later described Eli as an amazing kid, always smiling, always friendly, the kind of kid who would walk into a room and immediately make friends. So for more than a year, Eli lived with the Kronberg family. And according to everyone, he was doing very well. But here's the part that's chilling, because later, Nikita says something that stuck with a lot of people. She said she was afraid that Eli would be harmed if he ever went back to his mother. And unfortunately, that warning would end up being accurate, because in May 2022, Dakota County closed the child protection case, and Eli was returned to Halisa Thaler. And here's the part that shocks people, because everything that happened next took place in less than 2 weeks. On May 20th, 2022, someone called Minnesota police, and the reason they called was because a car was driving down the road, but something about the car just looked very wrong. The back window was shattered and one of the tires was completely gone. Not flat, gone. The car was driving on a rim. Now, I'm not a mechanic or anything, but if my car is missing a tire and the back window is blown out, I'm not going out to run errands that day. Exactly. So police pulled the car over, and behind the wheel was Halisa Thaler. And immediately, officers noticed something very strange. There was blood on her hands, blood on her face, blood on her clothing. Now, when officers asked about it, Thaler said that the blood came from removing a tampon. I guess it was just that urgent to do this while driving. Now, this was already a very strange explanation, but it gets way worse, because officers also noticed shotgun shell casings in the car and what looked like a bullet hole in the back seat. Now, at this point, things are already looking bad for Halisa. But officers still didn't know the worst part, because Eli Hart was in the trunk, deceased, 6 years old, shot multiple times. Very tragic. And the part that shocked a lot of people is what happened next. Because at the time of the traffic stop, officers had not searched the trunk. So after questioning Helisa, they actually gave her a ride home. Yeah, a ride home. Police drove her to her front door. Now, while Eli's body was still in the trunk of the car, they're just allowing this. So later on that day, officers went back to the car to investigate more. And unfortunately, that's where they found Eli's body in the trunk. Investigators said that Eli had been shot multiple times, including shots to the head and torso. And at that point, the entire situation changed. This was no longer a suspicious situation. This was a murder investigation now. Police went back to Helisa Thaler's apartment, but she wasn't there. Inside the apartment, the washing machine was running and the clothes she had been wearing that day were inside it. Eventually, officers located her nearby and they arrested her, of course. The investigation uncovered even more disturbing details because investigators followed the trail left by the damaged car, and along that route, they discovered evidence that had been thrown away, including a child booster seat. Now, investigators said that the damage on the seat was consistent with a shotgun blast. The case went to trial in 2023, and prosecutors argued that Helisa Thaler murdered her son just days after regaining custody. The jury agreed. She was convicted of first-degree murder and later sentenced to life in prison without parole. During sentencing, Eli's father spoke in court. His stepmother also spoke, and former foster mother Nikita Kronberg spoke as well. They all described the same thing: a kid who was loved, a kid who was happy, a kid who should still be here today. Eli's story continues to raise difficult questions. Questions about warning signs, questions about the child protection system, and questions about whether this tragedy could have been prevented. Because at the center of this case was a 6-year-old kid. A kid who loved playing outside, who loved fishing with his father, a kid who loved making friends, a kid who should have had his whole life ahead of him. And that is the truth behind the crime. If you enjoyed today's story, like and subscribe. And if there's a story you would like me to cover next, comment down below. And until next time, always stay humbled under Hamashiach.